Okay, well, welcome everybody to today's session, which is on summer research experiences, as one of our 3 professional development sessions for class. And today I have invited 3 guests who are joining us from outside of Miami. And I'm excited for you guys to be able to hear perspectives of students from other institutions. Also, going into this, didn't know a lot of students who had done summer research outside of Miami. And so I, reached out through the Twitterverse to some other undergraduates and former undergraduate students who I thought could bring you their advice. So I'm going to have our 3 panelists introduce themselves to you. And panelists, if you could give us your name and where you are now, as well as where you did your undergrad degree, and kind of a brief introduction to any summer, or if you've done post-bac research experiences, I think our students would be interested in those as well. So we'd love to hear about sort of what your experiences are and what you've done as a brief introduction. And then the students have all posted questions to our discussion board. So I have a list of questions here I'm going to ask you, and we're excited to hear what advice you have. So I'll start with Jacob because you're the first one on my screen. If you could introduce yourself, please.
Sure. Hi, my name is Jacob Nadell. I went to undergrad right down the road, a ways down the road at Oberlin in Ohio. And at Oberlin, I worked with both Professor Pat Simon on computational models of decision making and Professor Chris Howard on the role of dopamine and the striatum and habit formation. I also did a summer internship at University of California, San Francisco with Dr. Anatol Kreitzer working in his lab. And I'd be happy to talk about that as we go on. Currently, I'm a post-bac at the NIH. And I'd also be happy to talk more about that. It's been a great experience so far.
Thanks. Juan, will you go next?
Yes. Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Juan Vasquez. I went to the University of Texas at San Antonio. I did 3 years of research experience as an undergraduate in a learning and memory laboratory with Dr. Isabel Mucio. And then I did 2 internships. The first one in 2018, transitioning from a sophomore to a junior at the University of Iowa as part of the Big Ten Alliance program. And then in 2019, I did a second internship at the Stanford University as an adjunct scholar. Currently, I am working as a research assistant for the Massachusetts General Hospital, Harvard. But I was supposed to be a graduate student at this time. However, because of COVID, I decided to wait a year and defer.
Great, thank you. And let's hear from Samantha.
Hi, my name is Samantha Soto. I am a McNair Scholar and Senior Neuroscience major at Baylor University. I have conducted research at CU Boulder through the Leadership Alliance and SMART program. I've also conducted research at my home institution through the McNair program.
Great. Well, thanks again to the 3 of you for being here. And I just want to also say to our classmates or people in class, if you have additional questions as they're kind of talking, please put those in the chat or feel free to unmute yourself, of course, as always, and ask those so we can get some good interaction. But I do have your questions collated, so I can sort of guide the discussion that way. So I think one of the biggest questions our students had was just about how you found these research experiences, especially things that are outside of your home institution. So could you talk about what the process was for you and how you searched for these things, and if you have any suggestions of where they could look?
Absolutely. One of the first places that I found the current program that I went to last summer was through research conferences. And oftentimes through these conferences, there's a lot of networking and many programs that are pitching you their summer research program. Sometimes it is as easy as a Google search as well. And if you find research that you don't currently have at your institution, a great way to start is through those summer research programs and Googling a little bit into things that you don't necessarily have current access to.
Yeah, I agree with that. Google, I'd say, is a great way to go. I'd also say most, if not many, if not most, institutions have REUs, like summer research experience for undergraduates. So if you have particular institutions in mind, it's possible that you can just go on their website and find specific programs there. And if that doesn't work, that you can also, what I did from summer of my sophomore to junior years, I actually emailed individual PIs hoping to set up internships, and that can also work and allow you to do an internship in a specific lab.
So did you search for research that you were interested in and then just reached out to those people directly and they sort of set something up even though it was outside of an REU program?
Yes, that's exactly what happened. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, that's great advice.
As me too. First, the first time that I applied for an internship was I used Google, and I talked to people from a university who people that had already done research experiences, and I asked them, did you enjoy this program, and do you recommend it, right? And then I also looked into those applications that allowed me to apply to several schools in one application, so I wouldn't have to do multiple applications. Some of them, like I said, were the Big Ten Alliance, also the Leadership Alliance, and those kind of applications, because during undergraduate, I know that probably doing 10 for your first summer research experience could be a little bit difficult. So that's one strategy that I use.
Great, thanks for all that advice. I'll also remind everyone in class, we have some resources posted on our Canvas page. So there are some links to a couple websites that have collated some of these programs. So check that out. I will look up a couple of these things like the Big Ten Alliance, which I actually didn't know about, and put any additional links on there as well for everybody. So could you maybe next talk about what the application process was like? What was the timeline? What did they expect of you? Did you interview? What did that look like?
Yeah, so I can start off a bit. The process for the summer research internships is a little different than necessarily it would be for grad school in terms of timeline. Some of the timelines are very different. I remember some being over winter break, a few being in March, and then a few being in February. So it kind of varies. And then the troubling thing with that is you get answers at different times, and sometimes those answers mean that they want your response at a certain time, especially when you're weighing out different programs. That can be difficult. So just knowing when those lie is going to be really important. Overall, they require mostly the same things, which are CVs, personal statements, 2 letters of recommendations. I would recommend, as Juan said, as difficult as it is, apply to multiple programs, at least 5 to 10, just so that you give yourself the best odds of getting into one.
Yes, there is no interview. One thing that I definitely recommend is to start early, because if you have to distribute that time with your other responsibilities, right? You also have to find letters of recommendation, and for those, if you haven't had a research experience before applying to a summer program, I would recommend you to go to your science professor. However, make sure that your science professor or math professor, or depending on what kind of research experience you're interested, knows you to a personal level, where they can talk about you, not only about your grades, but the motivations that you have, your background, what are some of the things that you have struggled before, and how those things make you the person that you are currently. I think that one interesting thing about science is that people care a lot about you to a personal level. And so they want to hear who you are as a person. And that's one key factor in most applications that I found so far. And there is, like I said, there is no interview. So people will get to know you just by your personal statement. So you have to dedicate some time to really elaborate that, structure it to certain point where it flows and people can get to know you really well. Think about the fact that there is going to be hundreds of applications, and so you want to stand out in that crowd of people. So your personal statement is very, very important, and you have to definitely dedicate some good amount of time to tailor that to your specific summer research experience or application.
Yeah, what other advice do you three have on personal statements? Did you have somebody read it and help you with it, or are there particular strategies you use in writing that?
Yeah, whenever I'm writing personal statements, whether it be for summer experiences or grad school, I always start by thinking about the like three key things I want readers to take away. And I try to, and then I try to like create a narrative that will show these three key things. Even if I'm just like talking about my research experiences, I want to make sure I'm focused on those things that I want to be takeaways, and have an established narrative that I've set and that's on my mind before I start writing. And then I kind of just write and trim down from there. It's my strategy, at least.
Yes, I have a very similar one. Sometimes it just takes having that one session where you're super caffeinated and just write everything. And then after that, you can kind of take out some information that's a little draggy and show it to a lot of other either professors, your career center, writing centers. Those are all going to be great places to get your paper reviewed. Don't forget, because it is so essential, that you dedicate a section of your essay talking about the program itself and talking about reasons why you like it. And this could be specific people that you want to work with if they allow you to choose up front. Aspects of the programs, like does it include professional development? Talk about the professional development workshops. Talk about the research workshops. As much detail as you can read from their website, talk about in your essay. That is going to show that you did your research and that you are going to be a great fit for their program.
So the process for me to start a personal statement is definitely look at the prompt, right? See what they really want to hear from you. And then in my mind, I start to think about things that I would like to talk about. But it's really important for a personal statement, like the title of it says, right? It's personal. So you definitely have to find something that is very unique to you. And I'm saying that because a lot of times these personal statements start with when I was a child, I discovered that I was pretty curious and I wanted to do science. And if you think about that, that has become probably like an obsolete introduction for personal statements. Like most people start that way. And I would like you to think about something that is very personal to you, something that is very unique to you, and that you could talk about probably in your introduction, make a narrative, and then try to grab the reader's attention to that, right? So that way you can stand up in the crowd of hundreds of applications, and then also talk about in the personal level or the personal writing, talk about how those things that are very personal to you are linked to the science that you want to do or to the studies that you want to do. So in that way, they will get to know you in a professional level, but also in a personal level, which is very important in laboratory settings because they want to get to know you in the way that you're going to be working, right? Um, Also, let a lot of people read your personal statement because you want to get a lot of perspectives from people who will be reading your statements. A lot of these times in these filters to get accepted into a program in graduate school or also the summer programs, there's going to be multiple people reading your application, and so you want your personal statement to be nice to read, not only for one person, but for multiple people, right? So I think that's a good strategy to follow. What I can think right now. Yeah.
No, thank you. This is absolutely fantastic advice. I want everybody to be paying attention. And I think it applies to not just these specific summer research programs, but graduate schools of any kind, right? We have students in this class who might be thinking about, clinical psychology degrees or medical school, especially. Especially the point about, having someone else look at your statement and not just one person, but multiple. And I am very confident that these three here have been successful thus far because they're using those strategies. I really encourage you to do that. It's the number one thing I see students decide not to do. And I think it's because it's scary, right? You don't want that feedback on your writing. And even the students who work in my lab, I'll say, yeah, send me your statement. I'm happy to read it. And a lot of them don't, right? Like they don't want that anxiety of that feedback, but it's going to make such a difference. And as someone who's read statements, I can tell you it really comes across when a statement is polished versus not. So, swallow your pride and your anxieties and try to do that. And even if it's, again, Samantha mentioned a writing center. We have a great writing center here. And there are, some of your peers who can look at that, and they're not necessarily people So even if they give you a lot of negative feedback, you can just say, well, I'll never see them again, but take the good advice, right? So please use those resources. Thank you, guys. Okay, so we touched a bit on references. There was a question about references. I think that was also good advice about getting a professor you've had in class if you don't already have a research advisor, someone who can, who's advised you in science or math or something like that. That's a great piece of advice. One of the questions we had about was, were you paid for these summer research experiences? And did you come across some that weren't paid and some that were? Or what did that look like?
Yeah, so the ones that I've had have been paid. And for anyone who's looking for the paid research experiences, they're very intensive, and usually you will have to dedicate your time not just to the research, but to a paper, poster, or presentation at the end. So the most that I saw were that structure. You also have to notice, at least with these guidelines for paid research internships, that also means you can't take a class or any other jobs during the summer. So if you are able to balance that into your schedule, then paid is the way to go. If you are taking some classes or need to pick up an extra job, it might not be the best option.
Yeah, I would say most of the REUs and programs like that are paid and like Samantha said, are full time. But my summer research internship at UCSF, actually, the one where I emailed the PI directly was actually not paid. And I was lucky enough to be able to live with a friend in the area for the summer, so I didn't have to pay San Francisco rent. But that is definitely something to consider, and it's definitely something to mention if you are going to email an individual PI, because depending on their funding situation, it may be possible for you to get some payment. But that's definitely something worth keeping in mind. And that's.
Yeah, so in my experience, all the internships that I've done have been paid. One word of advice I will give you is to be very careful when you are looking to the summer programs and actually read if they are going to be paying you, and if this money is going to be just for you, or if you're going to have to make use of that money to pay either food or housing or transportation during that time that you're going to be at a certain city or state that it's different from your home state or home city. Because I had friends who did an internship somewhere else or applied somewhere else, and they did their research right, so they had to actually end up using that money that was paid to them to cover housing and food. And it's very, very, very concerning that because basically the money that you get paid is not going to be a lot to cover that. Sometimes you might have to borrow money if you go into those programs. So just be really, really careful. I know that, for example, Amgen, what they do now at Stanford, it's so like I am part of the MARC program. Well, I used to be part of the MARC program, and the MARC program has a specific amount of money for you to do a summer internship. And so now what Amgen does is they take that money that the NIH gives you, and then they try to accommodate so they complete the amount of money that it's left, right? So if NIH is giving you $900 and then the summer internship is paying $1,000, they cover the $100 that are missing, right? So just be really, really careful when it comes to that. There are some other programs that, for example, at Southwestern University, they give you the NIH money, and then Amgen gives you their stipend. So you're basically double dipping. So that's a really good deal, right? Because you're getting paid probably like more than you would get paid if you were doing a job during the summer. So just be really, really careful when it comes to that. Don't overlook that. However, also don't focus too much on the money, right? Make sure that you're going to be doing well during the summer, but also make sure that you're going to be at a program where you are going to feel comfortable. And it's a city that is going to be safe for you, that you're going to be happy, that you're going to enjoy. And that's advice for everything, right? So whenever you go somewhere, make sure that you are happy first, and then everything else it's covered.
Yes, I completely agree with the sentiments just said. Oftentimes a stipend could look super competitive, but then you compare your stipend from LA versus, Texas, where I'm at now, and you're dealing with two very different situations. So definitely look at those housing details and food details. Some will house you in a dorm, and then some have you choose, and that can be a little tricky. So just make sure that you have all of those details accounted for.
Yeah, that's great advice, and thanks for bringing up those details. There definitely seems like there's still a lot of variation, and there was when I was doing these types of programs too. When I did a summer experience, I was put in a dorm. I had a meal allowance and then a stipend on top of it. So like those are possibilities, something you guys should be aware of. When I mentored Amgen students when I was at the NIH and I mentored those students, I remember they get a stipend, but they had to pay for their housing in DC, right? And so that was like null. So that there's a lot of variability there. So definitely something to think about. All right, could you each, you kind of mentioned the commitment before that a lot of these are full-time. Could you talk about like what your day-to-day looked like during a summer when you were doing this type of research? And, if you also want to talk about what your research was about, that would be great. But I think there's a lot of interest in like, what will I even be doing if I'm doing one of these programs?
Yeah, so, oh, sorry. Did you want to go first?
No, you can.
Okay. Internet calls. Yeah, so my first summer with the McNair Scholars Program, I had been in Waco at Baylor, my home institution. So for about 6 to 8 hours out of the day, I was doing lab work in humans. So my research was looking at perceptions and stress experiences on cardiovascular acute responses to stress. And so that included testing people day in and day out. And then I had to make sure that I counted my own time when I wasn't in the lab dedicated to writing, creating those posters and presentations. So that's another 5 hours out of your day. It really did come out to 40 hours a week. So it is a full-time job. When you're not directly in the lab, you're also writing. Then this past summer, due to COVID restrictions, I worked with Dr. Sidoris at the University of Colorado at Boulder. That looked a little different because I wasn't able to be in the lab day to day. And you also might need to consider this if you're applying to summer research programs for this upcoming summer. You may have a similar structure. With that, the graduate students conducted most of the laboratory work. I did the literature reviews, a lot of the paper writing, the poster presentation, and the oral presentation. So most of my work was done virtually on a computer. Still had to sit for 4 to 6 hours a day in coding for the rest of my time. Either way, you'll be very busy, or at least I was, and that was what my experience was like.
So the summer programs, like Samantha said, this upcoming years are going to be probably different, but from my experience have been very intensive. I would say that I had dedicated, even though I was not supposed to probably, I dedicated more than 40 hours per week. When I was at Iowa, the first internship that I did at a summer program, I worked in a clinical laboratory. And so in the hospital, it was a um, um, neuro, it was neuropsychiatric for children, right? Sorry, I cannot pronounce that word. But I was studying depression in resonance. So I had to wake up really, really early because in clinical laboratories, they had meetings like at 7 in the morning, at 7 a.m. So I was not used to doing that, definitely. Um, and then I would be in the laboratory until 3 or 4 p.m. and then I would go home and have to work on my presentations and things like that. And then on top of that, we had meetings every single day in the evening around 5 p.m. And those were like seminars or presentations that students had, which were very fun and informative. So even though it was very intensive, I really enjoyed it. And then the one at Stanford University, that program was very, very intensive because I also had to wake up early, but we had some meetings in the evening that would go from like 6 to 9 p.m. And those were to prepare you for graduate school, for personal statement, for the NSF GRFP, which if you don't know, it's like a fellowship that you get, that you apply to before going to grad school or the first year during grad school, so it can cover your tuition. And it was pretty. So even though these things are kind of like very intense to do in the summer because you don't expect to be working that much, honestly, it went by so. And like I miss being there because I really, really enjoyed it. And then networking with people and getting to know people, you make friends that are gonna be friends for life. I still talk to a lot of the people that I met to my summer programs, and some of them are my closest friends. The really good thing about it is they are still a lot of support for the current times and for grad school and things like that. So it's time that even though it's going to be intensive, you are going to enjoy it if you really, really like it. Going to be definitely worth it. At the end of the day, it like doing work or a job. Also because the people that you meet most of the times are just really helpful. Like they are doing something that they love and that they feel a passion for. So it doesn't feel like you're asking them for a favor. It's more like you are collaborating and contributing to their work, and so you are both enjoying whatever you're doing. So yes, it may be a lot of work. If you really, it's definitely not.
Yeah, my experience was a little different because it wasn't one of these official programs. But when I did that internship in San Francisco, my day typically was running mouse behavior, sometimes stereotaxic surgeries, and data analysis for most of the rest of the day. And I probably worked 45 to 50 hours a week, but that wasn't necessarily required. And there were also journal clubs and just time chatting with the postdoc I was working with, talking about science and papers. And overall, I think you should be doing a lot of lab work, right? Like these programs are designed for you to advance your career and to gain research experience in a laboratory. So obviously your day-to-day will vary depending on the research that you're doing, and who knows if there will be in-person summer programs this summer. But as a whole, it should be pretty intensive lab work, and then if you're doing an official program, the professional development as well.
Yeah, could you guys elaborate on the professional development and what that looked like? I think that's sort of a unique thing about some of these programs that maybe isn't immediately obvious is going to be a part of it.
Yes, so the professional development programs that I remember were very research related, some of which are like grant writing workshops where you go over the parts of a grant, the different kinds of grants, and then how to write those, as well as personal statement and graduate school application workshops. Sometimes they're professional speaking and presentation ones as well. They're very multidimensional from what I've dealt with. Most of the ones that I've been to were based on graduate school and research. I don't know if anyone else has any other experiences with how theirs turned out.
Yeah, so for me, the personal development that happened, we're all, like I said, each day we had meetings and they would talk about a different topic. And it went from imposter syndrome, which is very personal, up to the application process to graduate school. So and programs. So I think that a lot of the programs help in programming these type of events and making sure that it's going to be a well-rounded program that is going to provide you a lot of things that you don't actually get the opportunity to have during undergraduate unless you belong to a program such as like Mark or like Samantha McNair or things like that. So I think that those events are really informative for people who don't have that opportunity and are really helpful. So they will give you an idea on how graduate school looks in the future. So yeah.
Great, thank you. So it sounds like you all thought this was pretty meaningful. There was a question about, this is a short period of time and it's just during the summer. So do you feel like it was worth it? And maybe how does it compare to any experiences you had that lasted longer that you did at your home institution?
Oh, absolutely. I conducted research throughout the year as a research assistant, but the summer is truly a valuable experience, especially with these research programs, because you get to have an investigation that's really something you're able to carry with you throughout your time in graduate school or even through applications and through the rest of your career. You have this project that you worked really tightly on and intensely on for a 10 to 12 week period. Also, the mentorship experience is amazing. You get to develop that one-on-one experience because your mentor is not crowded in classes and is able to devote more time to giving you that one-on-one guidance throughout the summer. And that has been extremely valuable to me, as well as just having that time to devote to writing and presenting. That part has been essential as well.
Yeah, so one thing I would say is that even though, research at home institution is longer in months, it's not full time. And summer typically is a full-time experience, and it allows you to go really in depth and do a lot of research that you wouldn't be able to do during the school year. And that's very valuable because basically it's like a simulation of a PhD, of like a PhD workload, right? That's not something you get when you're taking classes and you can only devote, I don't know, 5 to 15 hours during the academic year to lab work. It really shows you if spending full time in a lab is something that you enjoy.
So what was the biggest, like the best part of your experience? What was your takeaway? Was it doing the research or a relationship you formed with someone, or what do you think was like the biggest benefit?
I think that the most beneficial thing is the relationships that you form, the knowledge that you get, and all the skills that you learn, right? Because a summer program internship, it's really helpful when you are writing your personal statement for graduate school. So I definitely recommend taking opportunity of this type of programs to all of you if you are planning to apply to graduate school. It's definitely a paragraph in your personal statement where you're going to talk about things that you learned, how those make you as a person, and how they motivate you to pursue a career in research. So I think that everything that you learn there is going to be very helpful. And more specifically, those things that are going to add value to your life, right? If you had not the opportunity to talk to a lot of people or to build relationships with people, it's going to be a really good time for you. For example, me, I am very introvert during undergraduate, so I basically focus a lot to like lab work and then school work. And so during the summer programs, I had the opportunity to basically talk to people, right? And so that was really important for me to a personal level.
Yes, and I think one of the most important aspects of a summer program to take away from it is, do you even like research? You may just take it and be like, oh, this isn't exactly the way that I want to go. I'm more interested in the clinical aspect. This is a great way to find out if you're even interested and what kind of research that you're interested in.
Yeah, I don't. You both hit all my points right on the head. Yeah.
So related to what you said, Samantha, like how close was the research you were doing aligning with what you thought you were interested in going into this and maybe where you think you're going now? Did you get a choice in who you worked with or and what sorts of, what area you were in?
Yes, ironically, I originally had started off my research in human and stress research, and I had applied to summer programs outside of my school because I hadn't had any animal work, and I really wanted to see, okay, what kinds of opportunities am I going to want for grad school? Am I going to want to go human, or am I going to want to go animal? So when applying, I applied really looking at stress in animals, and I had known that there was some parts of addiction I was interested in, but I didn't know if there was an opportunity that would allow me to do directly just that. So when I was accepted to CU Boulder for the summer research program, I originally was assigned to stress in animal models, but because of COVID, that research wasn't available, and I was assigned to Dr. Sidoris, who was addiction and stress in animals. So I was like, oh my goodness, this is the perfect the perfect opportunity for me. So it was kind of magical almost how that ended up facilitating with each other. And now that I'm applying to graduate programs, I'm wanting to do just that, animal and stress research. It really brings all of the ideas that I have or I'm interested in together, and it pieced out really well how that happened.
So were you able to request, or was that because of your personal statement that they figured out what you were interested in, or how did that work out?
Yes, so part of it is through the personal statement. For other programs, I was able to specify who I wanted to work with. Because of the Leadership Alliance, you apply to 3 different schools that are within their program. And so through that, I wasn't able directly to choose who I wanted to work with. They match you with whoever they feel matches best with your interests based on your personal statement and other details in the application.
Great. And what about you, your other two? Did you feel like you were doing research in something you were really interested in? Did it kind of change your direction?
For me, it completely solidified my direction. I reached out to this person because I thought they were doing something that I was interested in. Turns out he very much was, and it basically set me on the path that I'm currently on, researching the striatum and addiction and plasticity.
Great.
For me, well, first I want to say that when you apply to summer programs, it's going to you will talk about your interests, right? And they will ask you if you have suggestions for the peers that you want to work with. However, please keep in mind that this is going to depend a lot on the summer program and the availability that the laboratories have, right? So, for example, at the University of Iowa, I was very able to choose my PI and the person that I wanted to work with. But at Stanford, the labs are mostly conformed by postdocs and grad students, and so it was kind of difficult there, right? So they will put you with someone that is going to be probably related to your field, but not very focused on what you want to do. And the way that this worked for me is in my first summer research experience, I was able to expand the skill set that I already had, right? So I was very used to do bench work at my home institution, but at the University of Iowa, I was able to do computational work, which was very relevant for me. And then once I went to Stanford University, I was able to again expand, learn some other that I was not trained on. And overall, these experiences helped me to identify what I really wanted to do and actually to combine two of the sciences that I want to study. And so they were helpful to me not only to identify what I wanted to do, but to make it very, very specific and to reassure that I wanted to do that. So I don't want to discourage you from applying to competitive programs like the Amgen program because it's going to be really helpful for you either with giving you a new experience and help you to determine if you want to do research or just learn something new. So like it's all going to depend from program to program and basically from lab to lab. So take a research experience more as a life opportunity to learn something and be somewhere else and just expand your experience as a person than just wanting to focus on something very specific. If you have that opportunity, is going to be amazing, but also don't get discouraged from doing a program like that.
Great. Well, thank you so much. So I am running toward the end of my list of questions. So anybody listening, if there are things I didn't think of or questions you still have, please put them in the chat so we can get those answered before we end here. And while you're thinking of those, I'm going to ask our panelists if there's anything they can think of that we missed, that, you know, advice that really should be transmitted here. And that can extend a little bit more if it's just about, you know, advice for getting ready for grad school or other types of things as well. We would love to hear from you. So if you need to take a minute to do that. And again, students, if you have any extra questions, please put them in there, and maybe a big thank you to our panelists as well. And we'll start to wrap up.
Yes, the biggest one for me is do not feel discouraged, as was said earlier, to apply to a program because you think that either you don't have the experience or that maybe the program that you came from doesn't exactly align. Apply for it anyways, because no matter what, if you do not apply, of course you're not going to get in. The programs that I was able to get into for the past summer, despite the cancellations, were ones that I did not think that I would ever have a chance to be in. So just taking that shot and pitching yourself the best that you can. They expect that not all of your applications are going to be fully done because you're still in undergrad. You're applying to research to get to research. So they don't expect that you have this gleaming research CV. So don't feel discouraged and really get all eyes on every application material that you can, and just take a deep breath and send in that application.
Is my one piece of wrapping up advice would be start early, if possible. The earlier I start, the less stressed I end up. Even if I haven't finished it up, I've still been like around the deadline. I've still been thinking about it for a lot longer, and that just makes me feel better personally.
Yeah, so the advice that I will give you is don't compare yourself to others, probably. It's like one of the things, and I'm telling you this because of my experience. So I've been dealing a lot in the last 3 years with anxiety, and this allowed me not to perform as I wanted to in my classes, and it's most like test anxiety. And so my GPA is not that high. But as you can see, I've been able to have experience in multiple programs. And so I would say don't think about like your competition. Think more about the things that make you special and unique. And if you have a low GPA, my GPA is not that high. It's not like a 4.0. Um, so just think about the things that make you unique and that you can talk about those. I think that when it comes to applying to these things, the writing is very important. So dedicate a lot of time to that. Um, and definitely think very positive. I know that when it comes to doing this type of applications, even for graduate school, I did the whole application process for graduate school. You can get very intimidated by thinking, do I really have the qualifications to be in this program? And I think each of you has the ability to be in this program, in any program that you want to be at. So definitely don't doubt about yourself and the capability that you might have. Don't think too much about a GPA. The requirement for some programs is a 3.0. But even if the requirements say you must have a 3.0 to apply, don't even pay attention to that and then just send your application, honestly. Like trying to find a way to break the rules. You can always do that. And when I'm saying that, it's to make you feel better, right? Because it's very, when you are doing these things, to feel safe and to feel like motivated to do this kind of things. So please don't get discouraged. Just apply, find people that will motivate you and that will be there to advise you, that will give you positive energy, and that would support you through the process. If you don't have anyone, you can email me, and I will be there with you through the application process, because it's something that I experienced, and I definitely don't want anyone else to go through that. So just feel free to email me.
Yes, I want to follow up and say same here. Follow up as well.
Feel free, for sure.
Great. Well, thank you guys for offering that. I will make sure to share your information with the class. And I just want to say thank you so much for doing this. I think your perspectives have been absolutely right on. And this advice has been amazing. And we're very, very lucky, I think, to have been able to do this. So, I'm giving you a round of applause. I know everybody else is virtually. And thanks again, everybody, for joining us here in class. Of course, if you have questions about this kind of stuff, you should reach out to me as well. And I am more than happy to give you my advice. I have mentored students who've been in these programs. I have done these programs myself as well, although not as recently as our panelists, but it wasn't too long ago. And I'm always happy to help look at applications or personal statements and things like that. So thanks again. We will wrap up this session, and I hope you all have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.